Well, welcome. This is episode 110 of Women on Wealth. I'm Julina Ogilvie, and today I'm joined by Jen Shoemaker-Davidson, the author of the upcoming book, Keep Talking, which is a powerful resource for navigating conversations with our kids, especially during the teenage years, which I now have two. This is when communication often becomes complicated, emotional, non-existent, and her approach helps parents build trust, diffuse conflict, and stay connected during one of the most defining stages of a child's life. One of the reasons I'm especially excited to have Jen on Women on Wealth is because so many of her lessons and communication have to do with the conversations around money. And so we're going to talk about how that kind of comes into the mold, I guess. So whether it's navigating financial mistakes, setting boundaries, preparing kids for independence, her philosophy aligns beautifully with the heart of the show, which is why I'm so excited to have you on, Jen. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh yeah, I'm excited because just from the couple of conversations that we've already had, this is right up my alley. So first of all, I love the title of the book, Keep Talking. That is something, by the way, that I am constantly yelling at my daughter on the volleyball court. I'm like, keep talking.
Yes, yes,
So it may not be
absolutely.
in terms of the conversation we're going to have today, but my girls know when I yell, keep talking. So.
Love it.
But let's talk about the what inspired you. You in the book you reference these life lesson lunches with your kids. Can you talk a little bit about that and how this came about?
Yes. I'm an overcommunicator and type A, and I had a lot of thoughts about how I wanted to parent. And when my daughter was getting ready to graduate from high school, I kind of panicked. Started thinking, I've got a lot in me that I feel like I haven't gotten out, and I had so much I wanted her to know before she kind of left the nest. And so I had a mental checklist, and I was struggling with communication, like we all are. I totally felt like I lost my kids during high school. I'm not relevant. And I kind of had to figure out a new way to get them to hear me. And so I came up with this idea of taking them out individually. And I started with my daughter, and I knew I'd be following right up with my son. He's 2 years behind her. And I took them out one on one to lunch. And it was food they wanted to eat. And I had their undivided attention. And I let them know that I was going to talk. They didn't have to, but I wanted them to hear me. And I just started talking about concepts and ideas and lessons that I thought were sort of non-negotiables, that were pretty important. And so, they caught on and they liked it, and
Mhm.
the communication opened up, and it really changed the way I communicated with my kids.
That's amazing. So did you start with more casual conversation and then start diving deeper along with
Yes,
with each
yeah. I
lunch?
mean, I think some of the first ones, were, you're going to go to college, and you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to feel, frustrated and stressed that you have to know what you want to be. And, nowadays they make you pick like as
Yeah.
you're applying, which is insane.
Yeah.
And I wanted to let, like, one of my chapters that I talk about is do you know what your kids are passionate about?
Hmm.
And I wanted them to know that yes, your academics are important, but stay curious.
Yeah.
In your free time, watch a TED Talk. Continuous lifelong learning is something that I pushed a lot with my kids.
Yeah.
And I really wanted them to know that, they need to pay attention to what makes them lose track of time. Isn't
Hmm.
that really kind of the litmus test to what we love to do? Like
Right.
what do you lose time doing? And don't forget that, and
Okay.
keep focusing on that.
Meaning, like, if you're on TikTok, what are you watching on TikTok?
Right. I mean, like my son was a big Lego guy, and I'd be like, enough. Like, you've got to do your homework and different things, like the things that you're passionate about, the things,
Yeah.
reading for a lot of people, and just exploring different things, or running, or all the different ways that fill our cup. Don't
Yeah.
forget that, because I feel like, they often say education is lost on the young, like not lost on the young, but like we don't as adults get enough time to fill our cup with the things that we're passionate about. And it's just
Mhm.
something that I wanted her to, and my son, to really never forget
Yeah.
that. there's a lot to learn out there and never stop learning.
Yeah, I love it. And
And
you, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and then we got into more and more how to make
Yeah,
a proper apology, mistakes. I mean, sex, all of it. There's just so many different topics I had, and they're all the big ones, the top ones are
so
in.
many.
Yeah,
And so you also talk about how teens pull away and they avoid these meaningful conversations. And I think you even had a study, I think 82% of parents like feel this. I do.
yeah,
So what are the most effective ways that parents can kind of open that door and have these conversations?
yeah. I talk a lot about that, and one of the biggest advantages that I found is to kind of stop focusing on the big talk and keep talking. Hence the topic or the title of
Hmm.
the book. It's the storytelling. This is something that I think we miss. And
Yeah,
right now, more than ever, people are not having those conversations with family, with friends. We're scrolling, we're distracted. And how do we communicate most effectively is through storytelling.
yeah.
And so what I started doing was just little bits here and there of telling stories, things that they would relate to. I think we look at our parents sometimes as these people that like impose the rules and they're not like us. And I think it helps us. It helps humanize us. And little by little, I just started talking about my life. Hey, when I was your age, those sorts of things. And they all of a sudden started saying, that's interesting. Like, tell me more, ask questions.
Mm,
And I found that stop putting the pressure on, you know, being the enforcer, being,
yeah,
of course, we've got rules, chores, all the things, the responsibilities, but
yeah,
don't forget that if that they have a lot of pressure
yeah,
in life. And just having conversations and questioning with curiosity opens them up.
yeah.
It really draws things out of them, is what I found.
Okay. Yeah, and it's so easy to get into a monotone of the same questions every day. How was school? Do you
Yes,
have any tests this week?
yes,
What's up with your grades? Like,
yes, yes. It
it's
becomes very transactional. Is your
very,
homework
yeah,
done?
yeah,
What did you do today? Yeah, come down for
exactly.
dinner. It's ready. I mean, it's just one word, one sentence, one word responses, or grunts or
E-
shrugs.
exactly. So, and so you emphasize active listening and embracing silence.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little about that? I think you have some examples as well.
I struggled a lot with that in the beginning. I made a lot of mistakes. I monologued a lot. I
Hmm.
would
I think we all do.
interrupt. Yeah, I mean, I think we have a tendency to try to like create our response while they're talking, and we're not even listening. And so I used to tell myself one of the things is wait longer than feels comfortable before you respond
Mm,
for a couple of reasons. One, I think it lets them know that we're active listening. And two, they sometimes keep talking. You know, they may have gone on if we didn't interrupt or come in or, interject. And it took me a long time to figure this out. A lot of practice. I still struggle with it. And
interesting. Yeah.
I just, if you can just try to remember to pause longer than feels comfortable.
Which is
Often
interesting
that,
because it's a method you hear in sales, right?
oh, really? Yeah.
You don't even think about applying it to family.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah. It works. It really does.
Okay.
It's
And
not easy, but
n-
it works.
no. And you talk about your own mistakes, how you were trying to build trust with your kids. Why is the vulnerability piece such a powerful tool?
I think when you have kids, you get together with your significant other and you're like, what are we going to be honest about? I
Mhm.
think it's just one of those things like, do we ever admit that we drank before the legal age or, premarital sex or, we snuck out of the house? I think a lot of those things are really hard. And some of
Yeah.
that stuff isn't even as relevant because, we had Mothers Against Drunk Drivers when I was in high
Yeah.
school and we had that contract where, okay, if I ever got into trouble, I could call my parents, no questions asked. And my kids were like, why, like with rideshare, like, why would that even be a thing?
Right.
I think some of these things don't really apply, but the ideas do. And
Yep.
I wanted to be honest in a way that made them realize I'm just like them. I was a teenager.
Hmm.
And again, it humanizes us and it helps them understand the importance of early disclosure. that's something that I kind of pushed. And I feel like if you admit mistakes, like I gave an example to my daughter one time where I told her I lied to my parents. We said we wanted to go to a movie. They dropped us off. My friends and I crossed the street. We got on the bus and went downtown. Now, if anything were to happen to us,
Yeah.
the farthest they would look would be the movie theater. And I think that, it's important for them to know we don't think about those things. But
Right.
as a parent, it's concerning. And so I was like, be honest as best you can. You're not going to be honest about everything, but understand the consequences of your actions. And if something does go sideways, which it inevitably does, early disclosure helps a lot.
Yeah.
The faster you tell me you made a mistake, maybe I can help or mitigate some of the damage or help you navigate through it because
Yeah.
we have perspective. We have lived experience that they don't have. And it kind of makes it feel like we're a soft place to land if something goes wrong. And I think being honest about mistakes we made and some of the situations that we went through helps with that.
Okay. Yeah. Like part of the maturing process.
Yeah.
Interesting. And you also talk about the lap bar analogy.
Yeah. I love it.
Explain why teens push boundaries
Yeah.
and like how can parents, how do you stay calm and as these kids are just sort of nudging us ever so slightly?
Oh, yeah. I had so the lap bar analogy is something that I think can help a lot of parents navigate this time because it kind of puts you in a mindset of understanding and reflecting back on how we were.
Hmm.
I was pretty mean to my mom and disrespectful to my dad and I push the boundaries myself. And when you get on a roller coaster and you put that harness down, the first thing we do is we push against it.
Yep.
And we don't do that expecting it to fly open and we fall out. We do it to ensure that it's safe and
Hmm.
that it works.
Right.
And that is what our kids are doing to us. And when they push against us, they're not, they don't want us to go away. They
Right.
are pushing to make sure that we're solid and that we're not going to just completely stop caring. And
Yeah.
when we think about it in that way, I think it helps us understand where they are. And
Hmm.
it's right on time. That's what they are supposed to be doing.
Right.
And this is where they get to push the limits, see what happens, and learn about consequences. I think natural consequences can teach a lot of lessons to our teenagers
Hmm.
if we allow them to. And
Absolutely.
I think just trying to stay calm. I mean, we all get triggered. I mean, and again, a trigger is something that reminds us back of something that happened with us. And I do think it helps us stay calm in the moment if we can to say, this is what they are supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
This is timely. This is soiling the nest is another way I used to remind myself, like maybe if I'm super annoyed with them, I
Yeah.
will want them to leave. It won't be as hard. Um,
Okay.
you
Yeah.
know, and just to kind of know that we're all going through it. This is supposed to be happening right on time.
It is trying to stay calm during these periods is very t difficult. And I think also sometimes kids might pick on one parent more than another.
Always, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Not
Yeah,
me, so okay.
yes. And just the same as mothers and daughters relationships are very complicated.
Exactly. So you also write that kids often define themselves by a profession, but passion matters more. So how can parents help kids discover what lightens them? You talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but how do you do it without projecting your expectations? And this is something that I've personally been a little bit bad at.
Yeah, I think that a perfect example of this is my son was super passionate about the environment. And ever since high school, he had a vision of this is what he was going to do. And he imagined himself out in the field. And, that was something that's the depiction. This was the profession. This was the job. And chemistry was a weed out class in college, as it
Mm,
is for a lot of people. And he struggled and he was about to pivot and said, I think I should switch to business. And I'm like,
mm,
are you passionate about business? And I remember the FaceTime call and he's like, no.
yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so what other options do you have? He's like, I don't have options, Mom. This is not an option for me anymore. This was the job I wanted, and I'm not good at this, and so I can't do that job. And I was like, there are options. You can
Mm.
talk to your advisor, you can see. And sure enough, he ended up, processing through that and pivoted from environmental science to environmental studies and learned a whole different side of um, that profession
Yeah.
and is working today in doing just that. And he didn't have to, you know, leave what he thought. He was focused on
Mhm.
the job
Yeah.
and not the passion. And he would have left that entirely. And to what end? To have a
Right.
job that, because a college professor made you feel like, this was not for you, or, the system makes it feel like it's not for you. And so that's like a great example to see, it isn't always about the job.
Hmm.
Follow
Yeah.
what you want to be doing and don't give up,
Right. Right.
don't throw in the towel just yet. See what
And
your options are.
and I think it's hard as a parent too. Like, for example, like I love finance. And if my daughter was to say, I think I'm gonna end up in finance, I'd be like, great, no questions asked. Let's go.
Yeah,
Right. And instead of taking that step back to be like, well, is this really what you want to do?
right,
It's
right.
hard not to have these biases of our own
Oh,
personal experience.
Oh, you see it in families all the time. You've got the law families, you've got the doctor families, you've got,
Yep.
it's, it is a thing. And
Hmm.
it's hard to not put that on your kids,
Yeah.
especially expectations. And again, that's just a checkpoint for the parent.
Yeah.
It's no different than sports, and parents
I
have a
was just gonna say, you
tendency.
and I talked about sports, and
Yes, I mean, I had two student athletes, and you know, yes, there were definitely times where I, pushed, but I knew very early on. In fact, when my kids were younger, I had people tell me, if you don't declare your sport by like fourth grade or something ridiculous, your kid will never play in college.
right.
And the reality coming from two people, I mean, my daughter didn't even declare her sport until junior year. She played volleyball and swam.
Wow.
And she wasn't burned out.
Yeah.
We push and we throw these expectations on our kids. And by the time they get to the point where they have some agency to make decisions for themselves,
Yeah.
they're not choosing what their parents would expect.
Right.
And I think that's a good reminder for us to just to step back. When we step back as parents, our kids step up
Yeah.
and we kind of find out what they're really all about, what
Well, and
matters.
it's tough too because I mean, especially with sports, society is pushing for that one sport. You need to decide early on. Like, it's amazing that your daughter was able to play two sports successfully
Yeah.
because most kids pick one and that's
Yeah.
all they do.
But cross training is so important. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just in life, right? I mean, it's just kind of applies to
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. I
And
mean, that could be a whole other podcast.
exactly that, yeah, off
But
topic,
yeah,
but it's true. So good checkpoint for parents to remember, this
it is.
is their life, and
Yeah.
they're the ones that are going to be doing it all. So
Hmm.
eventually, so we need to remember with any profession or anything, if they don't love it and they go to law school because you're a lawyer,
Yeah.
I don't know
No,
what.
it's a huge reminder. It's
Yeah,
important.
yeah,
And parents also struggle. Let's talk about money.
yeah. Let's talk about money. Yeah.
Yeah, so parents struggle to talk about money without, I mean, I talk about this all the time without passing your own anxieties. And I've been known to do this. So what advice do you have for parents who want to build an open conversation around money but don't quite know where to begin?
So I grew up with a scarcity mindset. And, my parents, we didn't have a lot. And so I definitely struggled to not have that. I would always be managing expectations. For Christmas, we're not going to have a lot of this. I was
Yeah.
a budgeter. We planned everything out because I didn't want to not have enough.
Hmm.
And so I would say take what I did, and we have to kind of modify it because again, I learned to balance this out. We would go to Disneyland every year, and my kids saw that once we set the trip, we would buy gift cards for the dinners. We didn't eat in the park. We planned it all out. So by the time we went to Disneyland, we didn't put everything on a credit card.
Mm.
And So they learn budgeting. We talked about that. We talked about how vacations are important for families, but they can be expensive. And, it's
Hmm.
just communicating what you're actually doing and
Right.
understanding there are different ways to manage money, to have the things you want, to be able to afford the things you need.
Yeah.
I made my kids learn how to balance a checkbook. I
Uh,
talk about that in the book, which
yep.
is
I talk
hilarious
I talk
because
about that all the time too. I love it. Everyone thinks it's so archaic.
it's so archaic, but it really drives home the point. And when
Yeah.
my daughter sat there and my son, and with that check register, like who
Hmm.
even has a check register anymore?
Yeah.
And they thought it was the most ridiculous thing they ever had to do. But then they started to see how it all adds up,
Yes.
and I reminded them that, a fun little way to save my mom did way back in the day is in her check register, she wrote a check for $20 and, 43 cents. She wrote it to 50 cents or
Hmm.
rounded up to the dollar. And she hid money inside her own account by kind of tricking herself with her check register. And just having those conversations with kids and showing them that, delay gratification. I mean,
It,
in today's day and age with influencers,
it is so hard to
oh
do.
my gosh, in the TikTok
Yeah.
shop, like it's right away. And even things that I think some parents don't even realize that my daughter brought to my attention is that these concerts, these big concert series that they
Yeah.
have, they're offering to put that on credit.
Unbelievable.
When you go to Ticketmaster to buy these,
Oh,
4-day
yeah.
festivals, you
Yeah.
can't afford it because they are expensive. Concerts are
Hmm.
expensive. Put it on credit. We'll let you do
Wow.
it for, 4 payments. And that is, if you can't afford it, maybe
Yeah.
you shouldn't be doing
Yeah. It's
it.
like they line up the tables at like freshman orientation day in college, sign up for these
Yep,
credit cards kind of mentality.
it's really scary.
It's
It's
very
really scary.
scary. Yeah.
And I think having training wheel checking accounts is really important. I did that with my kids.
Yeah.
They had a debit card.
Yeah.
It was tied, as an overdraft to my account. And, so if they made a mistake, I'm like, oh, look, you were
Yeah.
overdrawn.
Yeah.
Did you not realize that you didn't have, and it's just an ongoing conversation. And
Yeah.
it's uncomfortable and they don't want to have those conversations. And you don't want to give them a bad relationship with money. And I think that's the balance of being honest, but don't be scary about it.
Well,
Yeah,
and that's the hardest part is finding that balance. I mean,
yeah,
you have your own biases of how you grew up,
yeah,
and to make sure that you're not turning around and instilling it on your kids. I
right.
love the lessons that you've given with them because you clearly are teaching them that you have these biases, but you're allowing them to create their own
Yes.
versus just handing them over the negative biases that you might have. That's really hard to do.
But what is interesting is they do form their own thoughts because
Mhm.
I just had a conversation the other day talking about, if you've got my daughter and I were just saying she has this lotion that she loves and it's an expensive lotion and she doesn't even use it as much as she wants to because she doesn't want it to run out.
Yeah.
And she was like, I just realized I've had it for a year and I have so much left. Like she's figuring out herself she put that on her. So that's not even anything
Yeah.
like, she's like, I have a little bit of scarcity mindset too, and worrying about, and my husband is a great balance to me because, he will always be the one that comes in and says, you can always make more money, right? If you have a job, you can always have a side hustle. You can always do something. The kids can do something else.
Yeah.
There are little ways to have the things we want or need
Hmm.
you know, yes, be responsible and save your money and again, the idea of these kids going, when I sign up and get my first job, do I contribute to my 401k? Because that's going to take more money out. I'm not going to have that money to live on. I need that money to live on.
Right.
And to say, don't rob your future,
Yes.
because I
Hmm.
guarantee you there's going to be something you didn't need that you could have gone without.
Yeah.
And the 401k contribute, especially if they're matching. Those are also conversations to have with your kids.
And as simple as these conversations may seem to be, it's amazing to me how many individuals I meet that will say, no one ever talked to me about my 401k at my first job,
Yeah,
right? And so
exactly.
a lot of that falls on the parents.
Yeah.
right? It cannot just be on the education system. So,
And I think if you weren't taught that and you never had those conversations, and this goes to every single thing I talk about,
mhm,
just because that was our experience doesn't mean that we don't have the choice to do something differently.
exactly. Yeah.
We have the power to choose the lessons we
Hmm.
want to teach our kids.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the book is a good reminder because lucky for me, I was obsessed about making sure my kids understood XYZ.
Yeah.
And other people are like, God, I never thought about that.
Right.
Never thought about talking to my kids about money or teaching them this or that, or,
Hmm. Yeah.
And Emma tried to give gas money once in high school to a friend of hers, and the mom actually called me and said, don't have her give money. She doesn't pay for the gas. Have her buy her a Starbucks or something." And I thought,
Interesting.
it just made me pause a minute, and then I had
Yeah.
to sit down and explain that to Emma
Yes.
and say, "Hey, some people don't have to contribute to their gas money. Some people don't have to pay for anything. Some people
Yeah.
have it taken care of, and maybe
And
it's
it's
not
so
their
interesting
family."
because for so many teenagers, that first gas tank is
Oh,
really one of the larger bills that they are
oh,
responsible for paying for, and they have to start figuring out how to balance their money,
yeah, yeah,
right? So it's filling up a gas tank is a lot more than a few Starbucks nowadays.
yes.
So
Oh, especially now, yeah, and
yeah.
that is a conversation to be had because I think it is, there's the power of comparison,
Hmm.
and why do I have to pay for that? Or why do I have to contribute to that? It's no different
Yeah.
than, we have different rules in our house. I used to say
Hmm.
when my kids were little, we don't jump on our furniture. Some people jump on their furniture, and
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
a-okay for that family.
And I think you bring up an interesting point. You have to have that alignment because you're going to be very different than their friends, what their friends' parents may be allowing them to do or not allowing them to do.
Right.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
I love it. And you talk a lot about handling big emotions, and obviously money is a big emotional trigger. So, how can families have a calmer conversation, um, judgment-free maybe about financial responsibility?
Yeah. I think again, it goes back to we make mistakes.
Mhm.
We can't pay off our credit cards. We get into debt. There are families that file bankruptcy. I'm not saying bring them into every, intimate detail of your financial life, but also telling our kids that failure is a lesson
Hmm.
and they can be small and we can learn from them.
Yeah,
And there, nothing says uncomfortable than not paying your credit card and seeing that credit card companies charge you
right.
a fee if you don't, or a fee if you bounce a check or overdraw, and trying to balance that, this is what is responsible, but if you make a mistake, it isn't the end of the world.
Hmm. Yeah,
We can figure it out. There
yeah,
are, tools. And again, giving them the tools in their toolbox to navigate these, you know, especially now with financial times, it can be a dark place.
absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think, I had a conversation with my son just the other day about, how am I ever supposed to buy a house? How am I ever supposed to do this? That it's not, it doesn't feel easy and it feels very unattainable and it's scary.
Yeah.
And, I had a conversation with him that Dad and I had the same conversations. We lived through the stock market, the whole mortgage crisis, and
Yeah.
there are different, and my grandma in the depression, and every generation has their how are we getting out of this
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
moment, and to sort of just be there with them and say, we'll figure it out. We'll figure
Hmm.
it out. It's,
Yeah.
and to try to just stay calm and help them navigate through it,
Yeah.
be
And just
giving them tools. And if
and
if you're not equipped with the tools, learn together,
exactly. No, I
research
love
it
it.
and figure it out together.
And it's showing that emotion too and showing that vulnerability.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. So you encourage parents to model honest mistake making. How can parents use their own financial mistakes? And I'm already thinking of a couple things, but how would you have parents use these mistakes as teaching moments for their kids?
Yeah, I mean, my kids have gone through their when they have their training wheel, situations. I told them, I'm not going to come in and save you. I'm
Mm,
going to let you fail. Failure is where we learn, like I said before. And
hmm.
what a
Like
better
that.
place to do it in a contained environment when, it's not going to be the end of the world.
Yeah.
But there are going to be so many opportunities for them, and I give them agency. I talk about this in my book. When we give our kids an opportunity to make decisions for themselves, the world has a way of showing them the path,
Hmm.
one way or the other. And I even when my kids left the nest, I could see their checking accounts.
Yeah.
I could see, for an easy access to transfer money in for a food plan or whatever it is. I would see things and think, "Ooh, this is coming for them. This is interesting." Um, interested what it's interesting what they're spending their money on, and I wonder if they're looking. And a lot of people don't want to see, right?
Oh.
They don't want the accountability.
Hmm.
And just sitting back and letting it happen, letting
Okay.
those lessons happen before they're out with a family on their own and never had that opportunity to fail. Um, those are those are some of the best learning opportunities.
I love it. Yeah. And you think back, I mean, obviously these kids want their independence, they're social, they're emotional. How do you set healthy boundaries around money while you're still giving them room to, I know you talked a little bit about this, but are there other ways that you can give the boundary but allow them to grow?
Yeah, I often you would hear me say things like, "Well, how do you plan to pay for that?"
Yeah.
And just stop talking.
Hmm.
Oh, I'm gonna do, oh yeah, my friends, we're all gonna be doing this thing. We're all, this concert's coming to town and we all have this idea that we're all gonna go do this. And I'm like, ooh, interesting. How do you plan to pay for that? And it makes them stop and think, well,
Hmm.
have you even thought about how
Hmm.
much that will cost? Do you even know a way to make money in order to do that? I
Right.
think teaching work ethic to kids is one of those things that I think I, that I got work ethic hard from my dad. I mean, my
Mhm.
dad was a baker. He got up at 2 o'clock in the morning and went to bed very early and never called in sick. He would always say, I never called in sick, all of
Wow.
the things you hear. And I just like, wow, like that. I mean, I had work ethic. It was a big deal. I had a job when I turned 16. I worked on my 16th birthday. And nowadays, kids, it's hard, school to balance that and teaching them the importance of earning a
Hmm.
dollar and understanding taxes. When you work, they're taking taxes out. And I
Yeah.
grew up in Washington. We didn't have a state income tax. Now I'm in California. My kids were like, what the heck is going on? A lot of money comes out. And for what? Am I getting this back? And they have questions. Where's this money going? Those
Yes.
are great conversations to have,
Yes.
um, because who else is going to teach them that? Who else
Hmm.
is going to talk to them about where their money goes?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
investing. I mean, I'm sure the conversations you have with parents, and not everyone does this, but we started out with those little investment. We put a little bit of money in for penny stocks and said, buy some stock,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and walked through that with them.
Right.
And then you get to be older and you think, okay, if they want to invest in the stock market, where do they start? I
Hmm.
remember learning something in a business class once where the professor said, buy what you use,
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I love that one.
you
Yeah.
know, buy what you buy
Yeah.
and start there.
That's exactly what we did with our girls. Because I always say that. I'm like, I just want them to understand that the market goes up and down,
Yeah,
and you don't make decisions to sell when it goes down.
right,
And so in the pandemic, I said to my youngest, I said, pick a stock and pick a company. And she chose Amazon because it was at our door every day.
right.
So
Smart. Yeah,
yeah. So, and
yeah,
she now gets, I don't know if she's looking at it the way I am, but
right. Yes.
you have to start somewhere, and it's fun to have these conversations versus just let's just buy the S&P 500. And
Right,
eventually you want to introduce them to diversification, but early on
right,
you want them to understand what they're doing.
right, right.
Yeah.
And what a big mistake. And we did disclose this. I mean, when my husband and I were married, we had a portfolio that was not as diversified as it could have been. And there was money lost, I mean, with a lot of people during that time. And I think, understanding that it's not set it and forget it.
Yeah.
There are, when you're playing the stock market, you've got to be present and
Hmm.
understand what the climate is out there and things that are happening and stay on top of it.
Hmm. Yep.
Make sure that you're doing things that are going to help you long term. Otherwise, you're going to learn some lessons there as well.
Right. Right. Well, and we know the power of compounding, and time is the most important element of investing in general. So
Yes.
you got to start early, and it's always earlier than people think.
Oh, yeah. That was a
Yeah.
big conversation. And I think, again, the parents that, are able to have that conversation or even a means to help them when they're young to contribute even just tiny amounts
Yeah.
to, you know,
Start the habit.
sort of fund and really teach them the power of compounding. I mean, that is where it's
Yeah.
at. And because a lot of people don't save until it's way too late.
Way too late.
Way
Yeah.
too late.
It's so you talked about, sort of the stress of teenagers these days around classes and sports, and then my daughter's a junior and she's just starting to look at the college planning, and it is stressful. I can see the pivot in her very quickly, in just the months that we've been doing this. So what conversations should parents have to reduce anxiety? This is a very selfish question, to reduce this anxiety around this stress in high school.
Yeah. I mean, these kids have it way worse than we had it. I don't even remember stressing about some of this stuff.
No.
And again, this is also a checkpoint for parents too on taking your own temperature on your worries
Hmm.
and fears around like, oh my God, what'd you write in your essay? What are you applying? ACT, SAT, which I
Yeah.
don't even know now that I'm out of that game. What so much has changed
It's changing
post-pandemic,
all the time. Yeah.
what's applicable and it's so hard to navigate that scene.
Hmm.
And some people, I remember freshman year, people were already hiring professionals because somebody they knew did and they put the fear in them and it's hard not to get caught up in that.
Yeah.
And I think understanding what the expectations are of your kids and you and understanding like are you shooting for the moon? Are you going state school? Are you like
Yeah.
what is your plan? And if it's sports, how do you get recruited? Do you understand that there is a school for every athlete out there? I really
Mhm.
believe that. Um,
Yeah.
and that it doesn't have to be D1. There are so many opportunities to be a part of a team in college and
Yeah.
but also the other side of that, pick a school for the school because people get hurt.
Hmm.
All of a sudden you're out of school and you want to transfer because you went there for the coach or you went there for because your friends went there or you went there for a sorority. Really sitting down with your kids and saying, what do you want out of this
Hmm.
season of your life?
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of people are focused on friends. A lot of people want that.
Hmm.
And I think another lesson I learned and many of my friends have learned is, especially depending on your experience, if you found your people in college,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean your kids will.
Right. It can be a completely different experience.
Totally different experience.
Yep.
And I think the generation now, they're different anyway. I mean, they had such a different experience. My son had junior and senior year in COVID times,
Yeah.
and that changed them.
Yep.
And my daughter was in college at the time, but then she was sent home and all of these things we have to take into consideration
Yeah.
and kind of just take a little bit of the pressure off because everybody's experience is going to be different. But what is it that they want to get out of it? And then start there.
Okay.
If academics are number one, then that's the focus. Then let's spend the money on somebody helping with essays. Those
Hmm.
are going to be the things that are more important, athletics and, let's learn how to write coaches and get our name out there and figure out different ways to do that. Or friends, you
Yeah.
want to live in a place that's a big campus. I mean, do they have a football team?
Yes.
All of those questions, that could be a whole nother, I don't think I can make a book out of it, but a
Yeah.
fairly good sized pamphlet of there are a lot of things, conversations to be had around what they want out of that time of their life.
And it's so interesting. I mean, basically, it comes down to just opening that line of communication early about that.
Hmm.
And I was a little bit surprised as to how my daughter answered some of those questions last week. We just went through this. I
Yeah.
wasn't the one asking the questions. I had a third party
Oh, good
step
example.
in just because I thought she would open up a little bit more. And now I've been trying to take those answers and kind of circle back with her and follow up. But I was really surprised. I kind of thought I knew what direction she was going in,
Yeah.
but I wasn't completely accurate.
Yeah.
So,
And I would say also check back
yeah,
because sometimes I think these kids, they go back to their friends and they're like, well, what are you doing?
yeah,
You know,
yep,
not
absolutely.
everyone's a leader. And a lot of people are just like, well, I'm going to go do what the masses are doing,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know? And so they might change their mind.
So before we end this conversation, let's talk about the really, really uncomfortable topics, right? The sex, the drinking, the vaping, the social media. My husband sent me a text this morning, which is weird. It was like Monday at 10 a.m. He's like, we need to talk to one of our girls about fill in the blank. And I'm like, where is this coming from?
Oh boy. Yeah.
But this is something that, parents are always talking to each other about. How do you break the ice?
Yeah. This is something I'm pretty passionate about. I have an entire chapter dedicated to those tough conversations.
Mhm.
And I think you got to hit it head on. You have to be honest. You got to be direct. No
Yeah,
beating around the bush. You know, um, there's no
yeah.
time for that. And, I think especially with some of the conversations to have around, there's a lot to be worried about sending
Mhm.
our kids off out of the house. And,
Yeah,
you know, with everything, with drinking, with drugs, with, sex and just who they're going to come in contact with and what people
yeah,
are going to be asking of them and saying to them. And it's going to open worlds they need to be prepared for.
exactly.
And this is something most parents avoid.
Hmm.
And they figure they know it already or they'll learn it from their friends. God forbid the internet. You don't want them ever looking there for guidance.
Yeah.
Um, the world we see on TV and Hollywood's depiction of uh, any of those topics is not accurate. It is not what's happening in the real world. And um, conversations need to be very straightforward to help our kids be able to navigate that and be open that
Mm.
come to me if you have questions.
Yeah.
Be the trusted resource. Because if you can do that and you can build that trust little by little while they're still home,
Hmm.
when those scary moments come, and they will, you hope that they'll come back and say, hey, this happened.
Right.
And I don't know if I made the right decision, or this is, in tears will come, and so many things um, are out there, and we
Yeah.
cannot leave them ill-equipped. Be honest, be forward, be
And
straight.
it's hard because a lot of us, if we do talk about it, the typical response is usually, I know, mom. I know. Yeah, I know. And
Yeah.
it's like, how do you really know you got through to them?
Yeah, there are tests. Give them a test,
Give them a
verbal
test.
test.
Okay.
I mean, I have you know, I have a conversation in my book, in my sex chapter about um teaching your kids to learn how to put a condom on. And this is one of those conversations that, it's not comfortable for everyone.
No.
And it may not be for every family. And I say that, but
Yeah.
I had I had a friend who thought her son was going to be sexually active and asked if I could sort of workshop this chapter with him and his friends. And I talk about it in the book, and I said every single one of them laughed and they said, "We know, we got it." And I said,
Yeah.
great, then this is going to be a super short class.
Hmm.
You know, here you go, show me. And there was not a single one of them that actually knew what they were doing. And
Really?
there are a lot of ways to make mistakes putting a
Yeah.
condom on, if you can imagine. And it was very eye-opening.
Hmm.
And after the fact, a couple of them came by and they said to me, Mrs. Davidson, I have to be honest with you. I don't think my parents ever would have done that for me. And I have a confidence now, and thank you for that.
Amazing.
And you hope, you
Hmm.
hope that you get the courage to have those conversations. But I'm telling you, I've talked to a lot of kids and they want those open conversations with their parents.
It they're such tough conversations. I'm also laughing in the background, like my compliance officer is going to be like, "Wow, you really went there on the podcast, didn't you?"
You can cut it, you can edit it.
Let's see if he doesn't cut it. But
Yeah,
but that's the reality. I mean,
that's the reality.
these are hard conversations to have in public with other parents,
Yeah.
other peers, let alone facing your child,
Yep.
right? And saying we need to have this conversation. So,
But if you just come into it with humor
yeah,
and candor and just be like, look, this is going to be super awkward, but we're
yeah,
going to talk about it.
mhm,
And you can sit there and give me the craziest looks. That's fine, but listen to what I'm saying
yeah, exactly.
and kind of force it on them because they're gonna file that away,
Hmm.
you know. And you can say you don't have to ask questions, you don't have to, you don't have to
Yep.
respond, you're gonna listen. And that was what some of those conversations were in the lunches that I had with my kids. I mean, some of them were like, you have got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
We're not having this conversation. But you know what? After some time, and certainly now, they
Yeah.
circle back and they're like, I realize how lucky we were that we had those conversations, Mom.
Oh, that's amazing.
My friends didn't get those. And now
Yeah.
their friends call me, or their friends will
Yeah.
say, hey, help parents. This is why this book is so important because I think parents forget how important of a resource we are for our kids and
Hmm.
how our lived experience um, enriches their lives
Keep
in a lot of
talking.
ways. Yeah,
Yeah.
keep
Is
talking.
you kind of gone down this road anyways, but what are you hoping that parents can get out of the book?
My ultimate goal is that parents will feel like these conversations are not as complicated as we're making them.
Okay.
I mean, it's no different than getting up and saying, oh, I don't want to go to the gym. This is it. And
Yeah.
practice early and
Hmm.
often. And, when things are really tough and your kids are completely ignoring you, and that will happen,
Yeah.
you start small, but you do something every day that reminds your kids that you see them, whether it's cracking a joke, telling a story, inviting them in, while you're making dinner, and question
Yeah.
with curiosity and ask questions that cannot be answered by one
Okay.
word.
Yeah.
And
Oh, go ahead.
keep going. Don't give up.
Okay.
I have friends who are like, they just pushed me away and we're not relevant. And it's very easy to say, you know what, they're at that age now, they'll figure it out. They are not going to come to me anyway. It's super uncomfortable. Um, I guarantee you,
Mm,
they do not want you to stop
okay.
having conversations.
I think what I'm sort of getting out of this for myself is sort of getting out of that monotone lane.
Yeah,
And because we fall there so often, right?
yeah,
Especially once our kids have their license and they have ways to leave the house without, really understanding, wow, they're gone. Like they're busy, they have a job and they're in school. And how do you sit down with them? It's even harder. So
yeah.
for me, it's like, how do you get out of that lane and just start that, be more forced, maybe not forceful about the conversation, but be more aware of the
Right.
conversations that we're having.
That's why I took them out to lunch. They couldn't leave. I drove.
I love it. Yeah.
It was like you gotta eat and you
Yeah,
like this food. So listen,
exactly.
that was just one creative way of figuring out how I was going to get this job done. You
Yeah.
got to get creative.
Jen, I love the title. I love all of the messaging that you have in the book. And when is it due out?
It comes out January 27th,
Okay.
2026.
Yep. And so my goal is to get this out right before the book launches.
Yes. And it's
And
available for pre-order. And but yeah, when you can get it in your hot little hands,
okay.
people just start conversations and tell your stories.
Where is it available for pre-order?
Anywhere books are sold.
Okay.
Anywhere
Great.
books are sold. Check Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, all of those places will have it.
I love it. Thank you so much, Jen, for the
Oh my gosh,
conversation.
this was
Not an easy
wonderful.
one.
No, it's not, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
It is really, really worth it.
No,
Thank you so much for
I
having me.
appreciate it.